Gibson Guitars just released the new 2024 Les Paul Studio. And as a guy who's owned a studio for 18 years, I know a thing or two about this guitar. And in today's video, we're gonna compare the specs of the 2024 model to the specs of the 2004 model. And we're gonna find out if this new Les Paul Studio is better than previous models. Let's go. All right, let's get right into the comparison of the specs of these two guitars, and hopefully by the end of this video, it will help you make a decision whether this guitar is right for you. Let's start with the bodies of these two guitars. Both the 2024 model and the 2004 model have the traditional Les Paul bodies, which is a mahogany body with a plain maple top. The new Studio has the ultra modern weight relief. Here's a picture of that. And my 2004 model has the traditional weight relief. So as you can see, the new Les Pauls have more weight relief to them. That means they weigh less. My Les Paul Studio comes in at around 9.2 pounds, and I'm pretty sure the new Les Pauls will come in under 9 pounds. So if you have any back or shoulder issues, the new Les Pauls are definitely the way to go. The 2024 is finished with nitro, and the 2004 is finished with poly. And just a quick note about finishes, I prefer nitro. It goes on way thinner. It's not that thick poly finish, which is what this Les Paul is finished with. What happens with this poly finish is that it's so thick, when your hands start to get sweaty on stage, it becomes really sticky and it's just not fun to play. Whereas a nitro finish, just like my Les Paul Standard, is so much nicer to play. It's not as thick. And nitro was the preferred finish back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and it just feels so much better. And one more thing about the finishes on these guitars, I love that Gibson has finally given us burst on Les Paul Studios. Traditionally, they were finished with just a solid color, and well, it's not as aesthetically pleasing. So I really love what they did with the colors of this year's models. I love the cherry burst, and I love that blueberry burst. So kudos Gibson for finally giving us some cool colors. The neck on the 2024 model is mahogany and it's a slim taper, so it's that 60s style, and they did something really cool. They put binding on it. Binding, as you probably know, is reserved for higher end Gibsons, just like the Standard, the Customs, and the custom shops. And it's what makes these guitars super expensive, because the binding, it's such a tedious process and it just takes so much time. So it's really cool that Gibson put this on the Studio. The 2004 model is also finished with mahogany. Mine has a 50s baseball neck, which I love. And unfortunately, it is not finished with any binding. And last, both guitars have rosewood fingerboards and medium jumbo frets. By the way, my name's AJ. Thanks for stopping by for another video. The pickups is where we see a huge upgrade to this year's Studio. The 2024 model is shipped with the Burst Bucker Pros. Previous Gibson Studios were shipped with the 490R and the 498T, which are Gibson's entry-level PAF style pickups, and they sound okay, but the Burst Bucker Pros are so much better. The Burst Bucker Pros are reserved for higher end Les Pauls like the Standard, Les Paul Custom, and Custom Shop guitars. I've actually swapped out the 490R and the 498T on this guitar about 10 years ago, and I've settled on these Seymour Dunking / signature pickups. I have a video about this guitar. I'll post it right here. Another great upgrade to this year's model is the push-pull mod. That means you can split the coil of the humbuckers on this year's model into single coils. This Studio did not come with this mod. In fact, my Gibson Les Paul Standard didn't come with this mod, and I had my guitar tech put this one in. For those of you that don't know, the push-pull mod is where you're able to split the humbuckers into single coils by pushing or pulling the volume knobs. Now, one thing to remember when you are in the single coil mod, it's not gonna give you Strat-like tones. It's still gonna sound like a Les Paul, but a little bit thinner and a little bit smaller, almost kind of like a P90, but it's still super usable and you'll have way more options with your new Les Paul Studio. The tuners on the 2024 model are the same as the tuners in previous models. They are the standard vintage deluxe tuners. Let's talk about the plastics for a second. I'm talking about the pick guard, the pickup mounting ring, and other various covers on the guitar. For this year's model, for whatever reason, they did not include the poker chip, which is the cover that covers the three-way toggle switch. Now, I don't know why Gibson didn't include this in this year's model. I think it looks way better having it on, and it's literally a $3 part. So if you are looking at this guitar, don't let that be the reason why you don't get it, because literally it's a $3 part. So come on, Gibson, put that on in next year's model, okay? And lastly, let's talk about one of the most important things, the price. The 2024 Studio comes in at $1599 USD, which actually I was surprised at. With COVID and inflation and the prices of goods just skyrocketing, I thought this guitar was gonna come in at $1899 or $1999 USD. By the way, for my Canadian friends out there, $1599 USD is about $2,000 Canadian. I'm actually quite happy that this guitar came in at $1599, but I wanna talk about that later on in the video. I bought this Gibson Les Paul Studio in Nagoya, Japan in 2006, and it was my first good guitar, and I paid about $1,800 Canadian for it, which is, I can't remember what the conversion is into yen. I think it's about $13.99 USD. So now I'm not a financial guy, and I'm not gonna pretend like I know math, but like I said, I bought this guitar 18 years ago for $13.99 or so, and this year's model is $15.99. To me, with the cost of goods and inflation, it's right up there. I think it's the cost of this year's model is comparable to what this was 18 years ago. Now that we've seen the specs of both guitars and we've compared it with each other, you're probably wondering, AJ, what do you think of the new model compared to your old model? And I know I'm about to get some comments down below, so bring it, Chad. AJ, you're a Les Paul fanboy. I've admitted in multiple videos that I'm a Les Paul guy, so it's no secret. And in my opinion, Gibson hit it out of the park with the new 2024 Les Paul Studio. I'm gonna give you 3 reasons why, Chad. Number 1, the finish. They've given us nitro instead of poly. As I mentioned before, nitro just feels so much better to play. It's not as sticky, and honestly, your guitar is gonna age way better. So if you have this guitar for 20 years and you play it consistently, you're gonna have those cool marks. It's gonna be an actual road-worn guitar. So this guitar is just gonna age so well. Another note on the finish, Gibson is actually giving us some cool finishes. The Blueberry Burst and the Cherry Burst are awesome, where traditionally Studios were finished with a solid color. I actually like this color. So you can actually feel and see the wood on your guitar, and I think that is a huge upgrade. The second reason why I think the 2024 Studio is awesome is because of the neck binding. As I mentioned earlier in the video, neck binding is usually reserved for more high-end Les Pauls like the Standard, and previous Studios did not come with the binding. As an owner of a guitar with no binding and with binding, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, playing a guitar with binding is a way better experience. That means the edge of the fretboard is rounded off. It just feels so much better in your hands, and honestly, I think you're gonna play it way better. And not only will you play better, but aesthetically, I think binding on the neck looks so much better, and it's just a more refined looking guitar. And the third reason why I think this guitar is a home run is because the upgraded pickups. You're getting the Burstbucker Pros, and let me tell you, the 490R and the 490AT are okay pickups, but as soon as you play a higher end Gibson pickup like the Burstbucker Pros or the 57s like I have on my Standard, it's a world of difference. And not only do these pickups sound better than the stock 490R, 490AT, but you can also do the push-pull, so you can do single coil tones on your Les Paul. It's such a versatile guitar. You can't go wrong with having this Les Paul. I do want to talk about the price of this guitar for a second. As I mentioned earlier, it's listed for $15.99 USD. So depending on where you're at, I'm in Canada. With taxes, this guitar is about $2,000. Now, I don't know what kind of financial situation you are at, but I'm gonna assume that for 99% of us working musicians and hobbyists, $2,000 is a lot of money. And with the state of inflation in the economy, I don't like that Gibson is marketing this as a budget guitar when it's $2,000. And I get it, Gibson, in your line of guitars, $1,599 is on the lower end because you guys are selling really expensive guitars. I think marketing this as a budget guitar just puts a little bit of a sour taste in people's mouth, just saying. Now, having said all of that about the price of the new Studio, who do I think is this guitar for? Well, I think if you are a working musician who's been on a guitar like an Epiphone Les Paul for a few years and you want to level up your gear, then I think this guitar is a great option for you to get to that pro level. That's how I felt when I bought my Studio. I was on a Epiphone Les Paul for about 10 years and I was able to finally afford a real Gibson Les Paul. If you are a hobbyist guitar player and maybe you finally got that promotion at work and you have a little bit of cash to spend, and again, maybe you have a made in Mexico Fender or you have an Epiphone Les Paul and you want to take your gear to the next level, or you want to try a pro level guitar, then again, this guitar is a great choice for you because you will get the Les Paul experience without having to spend twice as much on a standard. That's all I got. I hope you found some value, and if you are looking at this guitar, I can guarantee you, you will love the Gibson Les Paul Studio. I've had mine for 18 years and it's changed my life. However, if you're still on the fence about buying a Les Paul, I made a video about 5 reasons why you should not get one. I'll post it right here. Please consider liking and subscribing. Hit that bell for notifications. I will see you guys in the next video. Pick up that Les Paul and let's go.